Good morning. Happy Friday once again to everybody. It's Maker That Money back with you live on YouTube, just like we are most Fridays, 9 a.m. Pacific. This is the podcast where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. I am Pooch of Repcord. With me, my trusty co-host, as always, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Good morning, Pooch. I'm doing well.
I am so happy to hear that. And with us, our special guest today, Mr. Chris Wiegand. Am I saying that right?
Yes, Chris Wiegand.
Wiegand. I'm sorry, Chris
Wiegand. That's all
Wiegand.
right.
Wiegand. Potato, potato. Wiegand. Okay, Wiegand. We're
Right.
gonna do Wiegand.
Wiegand.
Founder of RetroMaker 3D. Now, many of you who are in the 3D printing space, which we love to be in, have seen his handiwork. I was lucky enough to meet Chris at the Rocky Mountain Rep Rap Festival that happened back in, what was that, March? When did we go to
Yep,
that?
the end of March. Yep.
Oh, man, been a
Yep.
minute. But we hit it off. Chris is an incredibly talented designer, jack of all trades, maker of all sorts. We're going to get into your background and all of that and what your goals are for RetroMaker 3D. But we're going to do our housekeeping. And just to give you a heads up, we always like to start the show, Chris, with our wins of the week. So we think of something that's positive that happened either in our work lives or our business lives, but we try to keep it positive with that. So we'll give you a couple minutes to think through that while we do the housekeeping. In the meantime, greetings to everybody in the chat on YouTube. If you're listening back on your favorite podcasting platform after the fact, this is a great way to interact with us, feed us questions and comments. Feel free to join us. I'm seeing a lot of our usual suspects in the chat. Pezliz, Josh from CAD Class, 3D Musketeers, Fotis Mint. You want to talk about design gods? That's a great one to have in there. Good to see you, Alex. And some new faces too. Sun Turtle Camper. Actually, we've seen him before. Charlie Stop. So good to see all of you guys. If you would please do us the kindness of doing the like and the subscribe and all of that stuff so that we can make sure that YouTube is giving us our proper credit. K2 Kevin, good to see you, buddy. In Inix 3D, our friend Left Terrace out of Slovakia all the way. Good to see you. And Chum Nerd with no vowels, a very vowel averse individual. All right, Andrew, give us a win for the week, if you would, that does not involve, and I know what you're going to say, I think, but it does not involve your retail packaging this time.
Okay. Yeah, no. Okay, so major win for this week. Gloop has a new team member.
What? Who is
Yes,
it?
so
Who is this mystery individual?
Well, we're not saying who yet. But
Okay.
if you want to meet him, you got to come to Open Sauce July 15th and 16th. You'll get to meet him in person.
It's a him. Okay, so his pronouns are he, him. Okay.
Yeah.
Him? Okay.
Yeah, if you go with that, yes, it's he, him.
All right. Well, as always, we love the mystery to that. So congrats on the growth of the team. That's a huge win. Chris, what's something that's positive and awesome that's been happening in your life these days?
Well, I just celebrated my 50th birthday, and because of that, we actually went to a long vacation across the ocean there in Italy for
Oh
3
my
weeks.
gosh.
Oh wow.
So I just got back from a big vacation. Unfortunately, I'm also recovering from being a little sick because of that, I think. But
well, that sucks.
I guess the good news is that I'm better for this podcast.
That's fantastic. Well, we're
That's
glad
great.
you're healthy again. We're sorry you got the ick from travel, but I hope it was a awesome trip and you got to see a lot of stuff. How long were you in Italy for?
Almost 3 weeks.
Okay, so how much of it did you get to tour through? Where did you hit the big touristy spots? Did you go to back roads? What did you do?
A little bit of the back roads, actually. I've been to Italy several times before and never been south of Rome. So we decided to do a trip south of Rome. We went to a little town on the coast called Sperlonga, which is like a very Italian beach town. Not a lot of tourists. And then we did do the Amalfi Coast for a little bit.
Beautiful.
And then ended it up on a farm in a place called Paestum that has all these Greek temples that are still preserved. It was amazing, but
Wow.
definitely off the beaten track.
That's my favorite way to travel, hands down. Like
Mhm.
not doing touristy stuff, but trying to get to see like the way that the real the people live and do
Exactly.
stuff. So that's really cool. Very good. Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much. For my win
Hmm.
for the week, I'm going to say we kicked off a successful summer here in the Puccinelli household. Kids are already fired up. We've already done some basketball camp and lots of arts and crafts time, and this is fixing to be one of the best summers so far, in terms of just like kids are older and more independent and excited to try different things and do different things, and so we've been having a blast. We had a fantastic Father's Day a couple weeks ago where we all went rock climbing
Awesome.
together. So it's a good balance. It feels like a healthy balance of work and life, and my kids are in that sweet spot right now where it's like they still think I'm cool and they're still interested in hanging out a little bit, but I can see that that's okay, but now I want to go play with my friends, and that's great. So all good things, all good things. Tell us in the chat, everybody, what your positive win for the week was. Liz, I'm calling you out. I know a lot of you guys got to go to Murph. We both missed Murph. We all three missed Murph at
Yep.
Murph. So we want to hear
Hmm.
about that. That's the Midwest Rep Rap Festival for anybody listening back and saying what's Murph. That's a big 3D printing festival in Goshen, Indiana, that just happened. And yeah, like we said, we love hearing it all. I'll look through and maybe read some wins in just a little bit. But while we're waiting for people to comment, Chris, why don't you give us the quick background on who you are, what you do, and what RetroMaker 3D is?
Okay. Um, what I do mostly now, recently I've been a stay-at-home father um,
Ooh,
for a
congrats
couple of
to you.
years now.
That's a
Yeah,
big job.
right. Yeah, I think I'm in the same zone with the kids being at the right age. I've got an 8 and a 12, so yeah, it
Yep.
works out well. Um, but my background is in design. I went to school for architecture and then got into graphic and web design for many years afterwards. I guess the late 90s, early 2000s. Ended up back in the housing industry, I guess. I was a home inspector doing home energy audits and housing rehab for people, helping them fix their houses. And unfortunately, I had an accident and broke my back, which
Oh,
kind of changed things
Oh.
for me several years ago, right before COVID. And then COVID hit, decided to be a stay at home dad and kind of pursue this creative passion that I have, which is designing these 3D models. The way that I started was, I guess, about 10 years ago. I really got into miniature model train layouts.
right.
I'd seen one at one of my clients' houses and remembered, like, as a kid, loving, the model trains and actually setting them all up, doing the diorama, all the houses, buildings, things like that. So it kind of reignited my passion towards that. Um, what I found was I wanted to do an Italian layout, and I couldn't find a lot of the kind of size models. There weren't a lot available, so I started designing my own, and then sending them out to Shapeways to
Mm-hmm.
have them printed back then, and that was, I guess, back in 2013 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for several years until I got my own printer. I guess right around 2020, I got a Elegoo Mars resin printer and started printing off my own.
Mm-hmm.
Started selling some on eBay, just painting and working on my layout basically. And that's pretty much how it all got started.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID got me kind of into streaming. I was on Periscope, which is
Uh-huh.
the Twitter streaming
Okay.
platform, and then transferred from there to a short-lived streaming app called Haps, where I used to stream a lot of my design work as I was doing it and showing off the models, and then also befriending a few people. It kind of inspired me to get into the whole retro maker scene.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a funny start. One of my friends that was on there is a live action puppet named Homie Homie, and
Your friend is a live action puppet?
yeah, so he does like he did streaming on a bunch of different platforms where he's an animated like he builds his own puppet,
Uh-huh.
and then it's a foam puppet, and he's, acting and
Oh
doing all these
wow.
really fun things with backgrounds, and we became pretty close, and he was just like one day, "Hey, I'm designing this marionette breakdancing, puppet, and I've got this little Bluetooth speaker, and I want him to have a boombox."
Uh-huh.
So I was just like, "Well, I could design a boombox that would fit a 3D speaker." And I guess that was probably 3 years ago.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's how
Wow.
that all came to be. That's
It
cool.
I it is, yeah, and then I was just like, I love retro stuff. It's kind of I'm 50 and, my childhood was in the late '70s and most of the '80s, and I just started recreating all this stuff that I remembered and kinda making my own versions of it.
Uh-huh.
Uh, some radios, some little miniature TVs, things like that.
Uh-huh.
So he
Very
kinda got
cool.
me inspired into doing it, and, I started doing resin, and then actually, I guess it was only about a year ago that I finally got into FDM printing, with filament and everything. So
Okay.
that's changed the whole way I'm thinking about designing things. I'm designing much larger things than I used to. Um, I'm moving all
Gotcha.
around here. So yeah, so I guess that's a lot of kind of where I've come from, and it all culminated. I guess I started releasing models on Thangs and printables back in November,
Okay.
and that seemed to go really well. I had a design just that came out after Thanksgiving that was a snow globe that became really popular and actually won the holiday contest on printables.
That's right.
It's the light up snow globe with the votive candle in it,
Mm.
and I was like, wow, people kind of really like this stuff. Maybe I should continue doing this and see what I can do with it. So that's where I'm at with it. The Rocky Mountain Rip Rap Festival was my first kind of event and meeting a lot of people. Got a ton of positive feedback. It was really awesome. I got to meet you and
Yeah.
all a lot of people, a lot of
It's
great people. So
I can't recommend this enough, guys, that when you get the opportunity to go out and physically in real life interact with a lot of these people that we are in communities online with, it just changes the dynamic
Mhm.
of things dramatically, right? It like gives you just some great context to who that person is that you just don't seem to get in the same way just from chatting online, even if it's private and stuff like that. So I'm really
Mhm.
glad that we got to connect and that I got to like, oh, like actually hold some of your design pieces online because I've seen a ton of, photos and, videos of it in the back. And I'm like, oh, this guy's got some serious talent. The coasters that you did as your swag that you gave away. In fact, Liz is talking about she gave a bunch of those, like 80 of those away.
right.
Is a like probably one of the best advertisements for Polymaker I've seen in a long time, right? Because you got like tons of just like beautiful filament combinations, and you can see your real eye for design in that, just that alone, and never mind all the other amazing stuff that you're doing. And it's so neat to see a lot of your kind of passions and hobbies colliding with whether it's the trains pieces. I thought you were really smart to integrate. You didn't even mention it, but the piece from Zach Friedman, I'm drawing a blank on it.
Oh yeah, right. The
The
Gridfinity.
Gridfinity system.
Mhm.
Gridfinity, yeah, so I did a Gridfinity system for N scale model trains that includes a little track, like a display system, and then those display
Oh
system
wow.
cartridges can actually fit up into like a Gridfinity frame,
Hmm.
so you can, yeah, have, like, different size depending on what car or engine that you have in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was pretty popular too. It just seems like, I get these ideas and I just have to make them, and actually in the last year with the FDM printing and all the filament colors, it's just opened up a whole different way of thinking about it. Because I was so kind of stuck in the resin world where it's just like,
Hmm.
solid colors, and then I'd go back and paint them really intricately and do all that stuff. But
Mhm.
now I can see so many opportunities with all the different filament colors and styles.
Absolutely.
And so combining them, that's another thing that I like to do is I've been doing these almost these prints where there's different layers of different colors and it creates a background. Like I have these little inserts that go into the TV that's like, from the Spider-Man show
I
or,
know.
just different things.
Yeah,
Um,
and guys,
and now
all of
Hue
this is
Forge
in.
is out,
Yeah,
and
I was gonna say, oh man, with Hue Forge. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
and that's what I've been doing actually in the last week since I've been back.
Yeah.
I downloaded Hue Forge, and I'm going nuts with it. I've probably made 6 or 7 prints so far, and I just
Oh
love
wow.
that world too because it just, the artistic creativity, you can get images and do all sorts of things with the different layers, and
Yeah. So
exciting time right now.
tell our listeners that might be listening back, like give the quick details on what Hue Forge is for anybody that might not know that.
Sure, Hue Forge is it's a software where you'll take an image, bring it into the software, and it basically breaks down brightness levels so that you can set it into as many layers as you want, basically of color, or you can do shades of black and white
Mm-hmm.
to create an image that's almost photorealistic. But when you look at it, it
Oh,
actually looks
interesting.
like it's painted on because it's actually the filament is going layer over layer, and depending on what colors you use, they interact differently.
Mm-hmm.
They have different transmissive qualities to them. So some of the lighter ones
Mm-hmm.
um, bring out the colors from the other background
Mm-hmm.
layers, and it's very it's 0.08 millimeter layers that you're laying down, so super fine layers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been eager to play with
Wow.
it. It just seems like it just came out of nowhere, and it's just all the rage these days in the 3D printing world. So it's like kind
Mhm.
of an interesting evolution of um, like lithophane
Right,
meets. I guess it's I mean, it doesn't require because you're looking at light going through it, so it's not requiring backlighting
right. It's
necessarily.
not.
Although there may be application for that, I don't know.
Mhm.
I'd seen a couple examples of people doing a little bit of like CMYK style blending
Mm-hmm.
before
Mhm.
like Jason Pruce had some great demonstrations of that and whatnot. And this is just an interesting piece of software that really seems to be taking it to the next level. Like originally when I looked at it, it reminded me of the old like Photoshop days where you could like duotone or tritone things,
Right. Mhm.
and I guess
Mm-hmm.
conceptually it's doing that, but it's working on that light transmittance. It's more sophisticated than that, right? It's not
Right.
just like
Mm-hmm.
pointillizing and blending. It's actually
It's
using
yeah.
light coming
It's it's
through.
it's vectorizing the
Yes,
pixelated image
yes.
basically and creating the shapes, which I was actually doing kind of manually before Hue Forge came out, where I'd actually go in and kind of trace, images and be like, okay, well, this is going to be this color, and then I'm going to do a couple
Wow.
filament swaps on this piece, and then it's going to fit into this other color piece. And now Hue Forge is like, it's still like you're limited in terms of kind of a range of colors. It's not like you can just do a full color
Yeah.
Sure.
piece, at least that I've figured out how to do yet, unless you do multiple prints, I guess, and put them together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see the future there. It reminds me a lot of stuff that I was doing back in my graphic design
Mm.
days, and kind of
So
brings that all out.
So, gang, if you're interested, I know this is a podcast first and stuff like that. But if you want some visuals on some of the things that we're talking about, there's a link tree and some direct links to a lot of Chris's models in the description of this on our YouTube page here. Highly recommend like looking at to get some context to some of the things that we're talking about because it's incredible stuff. A couple comments to focus on. Photos Mint says your mini turntable is a seriously cool design. Nice work there. Good compliment
Thanks.
from one of the masters of design in our space. Win for the week for CAD class. Our good buddy Josh over at CAD class. He says they went viral on Reddit with their new book on Fusion 360 and hit #1 in 3D printing, which is
Wow.
that's huge
Awesome.
on Reddit,
Congratulations.
man. Come on.
Yeah.
That's way to knock it out of the park. Oh my gosh. Also, it's K2 Kevin's birthday today. Shout out to Kevin. We'll
Oh.
give him a
Happy
quick,
birthday, Kevin.
we'll mosh for you really quick here. Happy birthday to you. It's only 30 seconds, don't worry. This is the death metal mix. There it is. You're welcome, everybody.
Nice.
Hopefully, headphone warning. Yeah, too late after the fact. Amber, hello, good to see you. Welcome to the pod. It's always good to see New faces in the chat. Okay, so to carry on, I one of the things I wanted to point out that you mentioned that I think is really uh familiar to both Andrew and I, where it's like you'd said something about you were looking around for things that you were interested in and couldn't find it, so you said, I'm gonna make my own. And I think that's like such a common origin story for a lot of businesses. Sometimes it's just a side hustle or whatever, and you build this audience and this community a lot of times, and it starts to really occur to you the magnitude and the potential of like a lot of these things. And so it sounds like you kind of got bit by that bug and were excited and encouraged by a lot of it, and that's kind of one of the driving forces that's moving you forward as you go. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I want to put things out there that people enjoy. That's one of the things that I loved about the snow globe was that the reaction from people and how much it affected their holidays. The stories that I heard of like giving it as gifts and
Mm-hmm.
just how special it was for people. Just really like kind of brought it home that it's just not for me. I could have all these things, but I want to share them with people so that they
Yeah.
can have the same kind of fun and
and
relive the memories of whatever retro memories.
and it's so great that we have all these systems now in place that allow us to share that way, and hopefully do so in a way that can be sustainable as a designer, as business too. So I know you were one of
Mhm.
the founding or original people to kick off on Thangs with
Mhm.
the partner program on there to help
Right.
monetize some efforts, which I think is fantastic. And I know we're seeing more and more of that with other platforms as well. And again, guys, the links are in the description. So if you want to take a look and support what Chris is doing, we highly encourage you to do so. We love supporting our fellow maker businesses in every way we can. Uh, One of the cool things about Chris's designs, you'll probably notice off the top of immediately when you're looking at it, especially if you go to his Etsy store, is the combination. I haven't seen a lot of people combine resin and FDM the way
Mhm.
that you have in a very creative way. So a lot of these really those ornate, what would you call those, like the shades,
This yeah,
yeah,
the swag lamps.
the
Yeah, the retro
swag
swag lamp
lamps, retro
swag.
swag
S
lamps.
they yeah, they used to kinda hang on a chain,
Yeah.
but yeah, that
Mhm.
I got a ton of response from those. Those are
Sure.
definitely by far the most favorite of everyone's, but yeah, it was recreating those and I was like, "Well, I can make these resin gems," and I really got into all the different transparent resins and then hand coloring some of them,
Yeah.
to get the effects that I
Wow.
wanted, and then putting them into an FDM frame. Because at the time, I didn't have a printer that would print something that large. They're about, I guess, 9 inches tall
Yeah.
and,
Mhm.
about 4 or 5 inches around, and that just wouldn't work on my resin printer, so I was just like, "I gotta move to FDM to get the size that I want with these," and
Mhm.
then they all came together, and so, yeah, it's pretty cool. People really,
It's
like
not
the style.
it's absolutely, it's not just pretty cool, he's being humble, it's amazing, and it's like I said, it's a really neat example of like some mixed mode work where the lattice. So if you guys want to vision this, I'll tell the story a little bit, but the he's got these, yeah, these swag lamp covers, or however you want to call it, but the lattice, the framework, he's holding it up to show it, is done in FDM, and then he
Mhm.
resin prints these beautiful gems in like amazing colors that complement each other really well. And are they press fit? Do you glue them? How are you actually affixing them into
Um,
that lattice
ye
frame?
They are glued in.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Yeah, they I wish they could just press fit because it takes a while to glue them all
It's got to
in.
be
That
laborious.
large one, yeah, it's like 126 gems, so it takes me 2 or 3 hours to
Oh,
assemble
wow.
one,
Yeah, yeah, I'm
and
hearing
then
that.
just and finding the right glue that'll work with resin and, PLA,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. So those are
that's always the
available.
trick.
Those are available on your Etsy store. Yeah.
That's correct, yep,
Yeah.
Etsy.
So check that out. Those are really cool. And one of the things that surprised me about when I was looking at them at Rocky Mountain was they're hefty. They've got some substance to them because they're just like dense resin gems, and
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
it's
sure.
it's a cool design, guys. So good on you for that. Let's let's pivot for a second and talk about kind of like, we heard where you got your start. We heard the origin story. You're very clearly a creative individual. Is this you mentioned, you'd done some home inspection stuff and you've had to do a career change because you sustained a major injury. So it's not exactly your first like involvement in a business. Now, I don't know, when you were doing the home inspection stuff, was that your own home inspection company or were you working for somebody else?
I was working for somebody else actually, and I was
Okay.
working for doing county work, actually doing weatherization work for Boulder County. So
Okay.
I was actually going into people's homes, low income people that needed help with their energy bills, with their houses, just in general, a lot of neglected
Mhm.
maintenance and stuff. So
Gotcha. So what
yeah,
I'm getting
working in
at
that. Hmm.
is tell me what your goals are. Is your goal to start an actual business and make a go? I know you're kind of. It sounds like you're in that interesting side hustle space, and you're trying to feel out the what the product and the community and the revenue streams are. What are your goals? What are you thinking right now? And I know it's ever changing.
Right. Well, what I'm thinking is that I'd like to continue to do this 3D modeling and producing the models, selling them, online, and then also potentially selling them at some maker events, some craft fairs here that are local. Um, it's just the response that I got. I have a feeling that I'd be able to sell quite a bit, and so I'm just looking at that space, trying to figure out the best way to put them up. Etsy's just kind of the option that I've gone with because I've
Sure.
been on there for a couple of years, but potentially even getting my own websites together and doing all that type of stuff. But that's kind of where I'm at, is figuring out what I'm going to pull the trigger on and where these are all going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, looking at the whole the membership, the Patreon type model of
Mm-hmm.
just selling the, the the models themselves, the files.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's basically where I'm at, and just trying to figure out how far that's going to go. Like,
Yeah.
I've got a I actually was going to start a home inspection business right when COVID hit, and then COVID hit, and then that kind of dampened things. But I do have an LLC that I still have open
Mm-hmm.
that I could use. Basically,
Nice.
I'm debating whether I should start a new one. A lot of business type issues that I'm not totally 100% on. That I could use some advice or assistance. I guess need to seek that out.
And I'll tell you what, I think this is a very common space to be in. Andrew, I don't know what other individuals that you've,
Mhm.
come across, but I feel like it's in a lot of conversations. It's one of the, common maker challenges, right? Where it's like we're not typically business
Mhm.
people when we start off, and we're,
Yep.
there's a lot of potential directions you can go, and we're kind of feeling it out and navigating it. Um, you know, what I just see endless potential for you, Chris. I think the challenge is like, what do you focus on first? Where are you going to go? And obviously, thinking about it sounds great that you've got some framework in place, you've got some ideas, but you've also got time to go through it, and there's not an urgency to it, so you can very much organically build it and experiment as you go. And if you find that your theories aren't working in terms of like, well, I'm not getting a lot of revenue on my Etsy store, but I'm
Mhm.
getting a lot more attention from selling models. Maybe I go more that way.
Mhm.
There's great ways to kind of spread, go wide and feel that out. I don't know, Andrew, what are your feels in terms of like advice for people that are getting their start like Chris here, and
I
how
mean, a
to
lot
make
of
these
times
assessments? Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times, I think it's just throwing science at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
Just feel it out, see what's going to happen. When like for instance, when we started with Gloop, like we did a Kickstarter to see if there was interest, and it was kind of the lowest barrier to entry because we kind of figured we were going to have a product that was going to continually sell time and time again. So it was like, okay, well, that seems to be the best route. But I mean, for anything, like you just see what works. I don't think there's anything wrong because we learn by doing, and we learn a
Right.
lot more from those failures than I think we do from that instantaneous success too.
Right.
Because it allows us to like kind of refactor and reforge these ideas,
Yeah.
and find the best path. So that's what I like about the maker spirit too, is because I believe like that all exists inside of us, where we're constantly trying to make something better, whether it's just for our own personal reasons, whether it's a business that we're trying to start. We're constantly thinking about these things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Chris, you'd mentioned like, oh, maybe I should get some, advice around that stuff. But I can see how it's just like, maybe it certainly doesn't sound like a priority. You're lucky that you're in a space where it's like I think you can kind of dip your toe in and you can kind of navigate and
I'm
figure
very
out stuff.
fortunate.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think that's a great position to be in because I don't think starting a venture like this under any kind of like financial duress is ever a good look. But I know that's the hardest thing for a lot of us. It's like how do I know how much runway I need to have? Like what kind of investment do I need to put out there? And
Mhm.
so a lot of us are lucky that we have a partner that we can rely on for some
Exactly.
stuff like that, and that's great. That's great.
I'm very fortunate to have a spouse that has a very good paying job and has a lot of stability and health insurance and all that stuff. So
Oh,
I'm
good.
very fortunate
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
So it's really basically, bringing this hobby into, a small business and seeing where it goes. That's what I'm hoping
Mhm.
for, and I have the full support of my family, which is also awesome, and I'm very grateful for.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Have you gotten to involve your kids at all? Or do they take any interest in any of this stuff?
Yeah, yeah, they like the 3D printing, and I'm actually planning this summer to help them kind of learn some of the design stuff instead of just printing some stuff out for them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
getting them a little bit more involved because they're interested. They're kind of at that age, and I think it'd be great.
Sure.
Um, I might even. th- I've been thinking about possibly doing something with their schools, an after
Mm-hmm.
school club
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
for
very
3D
cool.
printing. I was involved with the PTA, and so I don't know. Things like that. I like to volunteer at their schools, so it's something that now that I've got a couple printers and, some know-how with the FDM, it took me a while, there was a little bit of a learning curve,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
plus I didn't start on the best machine, but now I have a better one, so it helps a lot,
It's all
to
part of the
figure it all
process.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
actually.
So
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, I was going to ask, like, I know that, you said that you studied or were trained as an architect.
Mhm.
Like, how was that transition from, it sounds like you've gone through a couple of those transitions, but
I
how was
have.
it kind of moving into this kind of design for 3D printing space? And kind of learning that because I know that this is a whole new blossoming industry still.
Sure, yeah, no, it was definitely interesting 'cause, I learned actually, when I went to school, we didn't even learn AutoCAD. It wasn't, like, part of the curriculum in the early '90s, at least at the school that I went to, so I had to learn it afterward and kind of struggled with it a bit. I was more into the graphic design aspect of design, I guess. I was doing industrial design stuff, doing posters,
Very cool.
realized that, the architecture school I went to Virginia Tech, and it was really multidisciplinary.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of design, we took a lot of different classes on printmaking, photography, ceramics, all sorts of stuff that
Oh,
that
wow.
you wouldn't necessarily think for an architecture education. So it was an easy transition when I got out of school to start working for I was actually working for ad agencies doing that dealt with, home building, and so I was doing a lot of graphic design for them, and for me, it was exciting because I was learning all these different software programs, I was being mentored, but then, yeah, I got back into the CAD portion of it. I use a program called SketchUp, which is kinda
Mm-hmm.
like Fusion 360, to do a lot of my work. I've been dipping into Blender
Mm-hmm.
recently,
Mm-hmm.
to learn that and to get more kind of organic shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something where I have a lot of development still yet to come with,
Yeah.
in terms of sculpting. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting world in terms of the architecture because now making models that are actually like watertight, and actually
Mm-hmm.
figuring out,
Mhm.
all the different aspects of the 3D design for printing. Um, so yeah.
That's great. Yeah, Grant in the chat saying "ew SketchUp." That's funny. I actually started.
Yeah.
SketchUp was one of the first CAD packages I started on, but it was mainly because we were doing some home remodel stuff. I know it's got deep roots in the architecture and structural
Mhm.
realms and stuff. So a lot of the tool sets are designed around that. It was never really meant to be a CAD package for like product design stuff.
Right.
But I know people there were plugins so that you could kick out STLs and stuff like that of,
Hmm.
varying success and stuff. And a lot of times it's just about going with what you know, right? So it's
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
it's good to learn new stuff, but we want to be able to iterate quickly. And I honestly, for product design stuff, I got my start on Tinkercad, and I
Hmm.
started. That's what I took to my kids' school, and just kind of did some like really rough classes on that. And it's just kids pick it up like that. It's
Hmm.
it's very intuitive. The Boolean model of doing add subtract, and the way that kids perceive shape and stuff, where it's just like, oh, the ice cream cone is really just a cone with a sphere on top of it, or a house is pyramid with on top of rectangle. And so it's like they can kind of start to see when I add shapes together, when I subtract shapes, and then you just go from there.
Hmm.
And now what Autodesk has done to integrate that and try to encourage people to move over to Fusion. And
Hmm.
obviously Autodesk packages are robust, and many Autodesk owns a ton of different platforms.
Hmm.
Blender, you mentioned Blender, Chris. That's one that
Hmm.
I've I've downloaded it. I've like looked at it, and then I just noped the heck out of there. I'm sure that's gotten more robust as we go. Now that's an open source platform, right?
Hmm.
So there's tools that are free, or free
Right.
freemium or whatever, like free CAD and stuff like that too. And again, a lot of it is you get what you pay for. Some of it is, you know, we go where there's robust training for it. So, Josh in the chat they realize like, hey, Fusion is very popular in our space. It's a more affordable um,
Hmm.
package probably for a lot of people that are getting their start than say buying a SolidWorks license is, which is
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
historically been
Right.
the package of choice for the machining space, I guess,
Hmm.
or just professional design, product design. But there's a ton of options, and the right one for you guys is the one that you have access to, that you're comfortable with, and then as your needs change, you just have to be comfortable with pivoting and adapting. And you know I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. I don't know if you have any feels, Chris. You've probably been exposed to a number of different software tools with all the various, expertise you've had.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and I always love learning new software. What's great is that if you have a basic knowledge of a lot of the software, it translates to other software packages.
mm-hmm,
So the
mm-hmm.
more you learn, the easier the other ones seem to get.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
fair. Maybe like analogous to like learning languages. Like once you get the basis of like how a lot of romantic languages work, it becomes a little bit easier. Programming is the
mhm.
same. It's a lot of times it's just syntax,
Yep.
right? It's
Right.
learning
Yep.
and finding good ways to, like, I don't memorize syntax, but if I have a general flow of an architecture of a code or something like that,
Mhm.
moving between languages isn't as difficult. Onshape, yeah, is mentioned in the chat. Level betted
Sure.
XYZ, that's a good one at the moment too. I haven't gotten to play with it a lot. I know that it's very heavily cloud based. Is that right?
Hmm.
And it seemed pretty robust when I'd looked at it too. So that could be a good affordable option for anybody that's looking to get into some product design stuff as well. Lots of more options than ever. I mean, it is, what a time to be alive, right? In terms of like all
Oh
the
yeah.
all the tool sets that we have available to us.
That's true.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, yeah, as a
Yeah.
designer, you remember back to like the early days of Photoshop and all this stuff, and how far
Oh,
stuff like
yeah.
that's
I
come.
remember Photoshop 2.0.
Yeah.
I think I started using Photoshop back in, like, 94 or
Yeah.
something
Oh
in
Before
wow.
college.
before it even had
Yeah.
like a clone stamp,
Oh,
or like even like
right.
just some really basic fundamental tools now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it was great learning all those, graphic design programs, back in the day, and now it's just like there's so many different options, and then it's a matter of, like, what I can afford licenses to in terms of what I'm using them for, and it's kinda striking that balance of,
Yeah.
free stuff to how
That's
much am I gonna pay for something and what's the return on that.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and in the maker space, I mean, it's such a common story, right? Like a lot of times we get started in a hobby, and then we're like, okay, how am I gonna like justify this? Like, do I, sell some
Hmm.
stuff so I can pay for these printers and pay for this software and
Right.
all that stuff. So it's, I mean, I won't lie, like that's like a lot of the way I got started with my printers, and I put them up for on the in the early days of 3D hubs and all that stuff. And didn't stick
Hmm.
with it, but got a couple bucks here and there. Didn't that didn't, move the needle fully. That's not true. I actually got a couple jobs that probably covered like one of my printers, maybe. But it's all about getting experience, getting to the next thing, and inspiring yourself with new ideas and new communities, and you know, all of that. So
Mhm.
very cool. We I think would be I would say it would be remiss if we didn't ask you in terms of just like what as what advice, I guess, would you have for somebody in a similar space? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that I've encountered that are kind of noodling. How do I take this a little bit further? So, based on how far you are and what you're doing, what would you recommend if you could go back to stage zero and do this all again to somebody else that might be thinking about getting started with a little design business in product design or CAD design or modeling and that stuff?
I guess going back, make sure you learn the software, I guess, that you're gonna be using, and just keep doing it, don't worry about kinda what other people think. Just do what you like to do, kinda learn from that, um, be alright with making mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
'cause it's all a learning process. I guess those things, yeah. There's been a lot of different learning curves that I've hit, originally sending models out to Shapeways before I could even print anything, and then
Mm-hmm.
they would send the files back like, "Oh, there's, you know, reversed axis is here and you've got to change this and fix this." So I was
Not
just like,
manifold.
"Oh, why
Yeah.
yeah, why
Yeah.
is it like this, the manifold?" And I'm just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
so frustrated," and felt like sometimes I'm like, "What am I even doing? This isn't really working."
Mm.
But then just kept kinda sticking with it, and realizing that each stage that you go through, there's gonna be kind of obstacles, and the more you just continue doing it, you can overcome those obstacles, and really just make sure that you enjoy it, that you're doing it for the right reasons, that it's something that you really are passionate about, that you wanna do and,
Well said.
have a drive for.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people just start doing without really even thinking about what those reasons might be. Wait, why am I doing this? Like, what is it? What is the point
Right.
here? And a lot of times, just exploring and learning is a perfectly valid and great reason. So we were saying, like, we hear the term "fail fast" a lot of the time, or whatever, but
Mhm.
even failing slow is fine. Like, I think we as humans don't really give ourselves credit for the experience as much as we should. We look back and we're like, I don't have a lot to show for, because we think like, well, my bank account's not any more full or whatever. But your every day, your life, you've experienced more things. You're in a better position potentially to get to the next step. We just don't give ourselves credit for that progress along the way a lot of the time, which I think is interesting. I don't know. You agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you have to kinda reward yourself with small victories, um, even if they don't feel like big victories, you can kinda make them into big victories in your life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, like, self-positivity that kind of feeds back on itself.
Yeah. One of the really smart things that I feel like you do, that I don't know if it's mindfully strategic, or if it's just something you just kind of intuited, but your desire to pair with successful things, and build on top of them. So the Gridfinity example, using these new systems and being helping promote you know new features on Thangs and printables, and winning the design
Mhm.
competitions, things where it's like, be part of the community, invest your time and energy in finding ways to um, kind of tether in with successful things that are already out there, right? Rather than trying to
Mhm.
build something from scratch. Because anybody can
Right,
go and create a website and make their own forum and all that stuff, but it's like going to be crickets out there if you don't
right.
know. And so it's like there's so many
Sure.
great ways to inject yourself into the conversation, for visibility.
Right. Yeah,
Is
you
that
don't necessarily wanna be an island, you don't wanna
right?
be an island out there in the ocean, and I think,
Mhm.
I've been really involved now with, Twitch in the last, year and a half, and just following a lot of the people and learning things from them, and then just kind of just meeting all those people, at the Rocky Mountain Riprap Festival, and just seeing what the community is about, and respecting the community and understanding where it comes from,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
then also kind of trying to become part of that community, in different ways.
Well, and that's we let's not gloss over that, because I think that's a
Mhm.
piece that a
Hmm.
lot of people miss, that it's a two-way street, right? So it's like we
Hmm.
want to rely on the community to help us, but you need to go be active and participate. And I think there's a lot of I think it just depends on your mindset, but I think this is a big thing that a lot of entrepreneurial minded people can tend to miss when they're not necessarily of the same social mentality. I think that, you know, coming from an open source background myself and using a lot of open source tools and relying on other people in the same space, there's an inherent community built into those things. And I realize that I want to contribute back on projects that I have definitely, I always say we're
Hmm.
all built on the shoulders of giants to some extent. If you
Yep.
drive back far enough in almost every aspect of your life, like we get to shortcut so many
Hmm.
things because of all the work that people that came before us got to
True.
do. And
Mhm.
so having an appreciation for that and recognizing that, yes, this community helps you, but I need to also help the community, that synergistic effect is just so, it cannot be overstated. And the more you amplify that by participating in more communities, broader communities, different communities, being accepting of different perspectives and stuff. This is why,
Mhm.
like, being a good player, and I'm not trying to make this a political thing, but the more
Hmm.
open-minded and inclusive you are to broader communities, I've seen in my life that you're way more likely to have success than the people that are like, we are this way and we are walled off and these are our principles and everybody else is the enemy. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and I think that's a big challenge with a lot of what we see and hear in this day and age. It's a digression from
Sure.
business, but I think it really matters, and a lot of people miss that nuance.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're really right. I'm just definitely trying to integrate myself more with the community. I'm thinking about getting back into streaming
Hmm.
so that I can, obviously, for
Very
marketing
cool.
purposes, it would be great to share a lot of my techniques and showing how I put the models together.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just a matter of finding the time
Yep.
to do that, and figuring out. I've got grand ideas. I've been, like, for the last year, working on all these little, doing a lot of video editing stuff that I'm learning.
Hmm.
I like to do a lot of kind of retro videos where it's kind of artistic
Yeah.
blends of different things, and I have this whole catalog of things that I'm just kind of waiting to, like, okay, I'm gonna start streaming again, and but I've just been kind of sitting back and watching and just becoming part of the community and connecting with people that, are kind of like-minded, but then also maybe not like-minded, just to
Yeah.
understand what the space is, and try not to be divisive. Like, I don't like
Hmm.
kind of conflict within the space, so it's a matter of finding that balance of, um, being engaged without kind of, stirring up the pot, or
Yeah. Kicking the
poking
hornet's
poking
nest.
the
Yeah.
hornet's nest,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
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 that type of
Hmm.
thing. 'Cause I am pretty, like, friendly
Oh,
person,
yeah.
and I don't like controversy, so
Sure.
I'm looking at, the balance of how do I do this, and then do the business, and, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's be realistic. I think it's like a lot of times it's like family. It's like there's always, the one black sheep of the family. It's not one. It's like communities have just different dynamics, and there's people with different desires and motivations and stuff like that.
Sure.
And so you can't go in. I mean, we try to do our best to moderate and make it as inclusive for everyone, but it can be a real drag. I've seen a lot of people burn out on it because, uh, like you, they just we're conflict avoidance is pretty common stuff. Like people don't want that. It creates stress. It creates all kinds of interesting
Hmm.
things. There's so many psychological components to this, but it is something that you need to navigate, especially if you're getting
Mhm.
into business, because the expectations change dramatically when people start paying their hard earned for something, and they want support, or they have expectation of a certain quality and all that stuff. And so it's not to say that you need to grow a thick skin. I mean, just by itself,
Mm.
you do definitely need to like learn how to like navigate that. But part of it is like insulating yourself and learning how to handle that, conflict in a different way. You might
Right.
decide, I think a lot of people decide not to do the business because of they just don't think about those elements of it and what a drag that can be. Andrew, why don't you talk on that for a second? Because I know you get experiences just as much as anybody else. For the most part, very positive, but there's always going to be a couple bad apples that really
Hmm.
outweigh they tax your emotion, far more
Well,
than anybody
sure.
else, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really that simple. I mean, I don't really know if there's a whole lot else to go into
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
other
yeah.
than it's just there's some good ones, there's some bad ones.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think what I'm alluding to is like that's always
Hmm.
I want to try to advise people getting started when and Chris didn't ask for this, so this is unsolicited advice, but
Hmm.
it's always just like go in with open eyes, keep in mind
Yeah.
that the this is the reality
Hmm.
of it, and then
Yep.
like let's try to be realistic about what's going to work, and honestly, you may be far better insulated from that as a kind of an artistic type offering certain types of things than like a very technically heavy product or something like that. It's a different
Hmm.
experience, I think, for everyone. But managing expectations, I think, is a common thread for pretty much any business, right? So
Right.
Hmm.
do with that as you will.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Well,
this
I like that there's all these different spaces, like there's designers, there's people that are more technically oriented with machines.
mhm.
I like that there's a variety of different approaches to the community.
Yeah, yeah. You'd mentioned, sales marketing, doing video editing and streaming and all these things. We've got these great
Yeah.
tools at our disposal for getting the message out and sharing your stuff. Now, when you're so visually, that your product is very visually intensive. You can't
Mhm.
describe. You have to see it. You have to hold. It's almost like even the
Hmm.
video, even the is not the same experience as like I was saying, having it in your hand and understanding the heft and the feel of this thing and the
True.
perception of quality and stuff. Um, and the amount of time that you can take and invest in having those, I think it's fantastic. If you can do, I always say, video is way better than still. A picture is worth 1,000 words. A video is worth, you know, a million sometimes. And who knows what the future
Hmm.
will hold. But that's why we go to the next step and say, go to these events in real life, because
Right.
that in
Hmm.
person is like the next level. And I don't know that it
Definitely.
ever gets really much better than the tangible. I know we see tech dabbling in it with the idea of like, oh, if we can just introduce, virtual reality and we have 3D tools and stuff like that, but it's never the same, right? What does it feel
Right.
like? How do I use all of my senses to experience it? What does it smell like? Maybe that's important to some people. If stuff's made out of resin and it's got that little, thing. Now it's cured resin, so it's not like,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
but there's a different perception of it, right? And
Right.
those little things are what make all the difference in terms of how your customers perceive, the experience. It's a sensory experience first and foremost. I don't know.
Right. And I think I'm getting really excited to do more events and then also potentially more of these, sales events because the experience that I had at Rocky Mountain Rep Rap Festival was just incredible. The amount of people that wanted to talk to me about, what I was doing, and then just the feedback back and forth, I think is so much more than what you would get online, even, with just a few comments or what have you. You
Yeah.
kind of really make those connections, which is important,
Yeah.
definitely. And, at first I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be nervous about this," and I shouldn't be because one of the other jobs I've had was I was a DJ for weddings, and I've done like the
Oh
whole
wow.
mic stuff. The list of things that I've done as jobs, you guys would be kind of blown away by some of the things that I've done in the past. But it's like, I get these ideas. I want to do this. I want to see how this goes. And I think this 3D stuff is what I've kind of settled on here at this point in my life. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, these events I think are really important, and I'm looking to figure out the monetization part of it.
Right.
Actually making the sales and seeing the people, enjoying my stuff and taking it away. I felt bad because I didn't have anything. I had a few things to give away, and I should have given away more at the Rep Rap Fest, but it's a learning process, and I hope
That's
to
Hmm.
attend next year. I'd love to go to the other ones,
yeah.
in the future and just and kind of do more of it because it was really exciting and just had the best time.
That's
And I
awesome to
think it
hear.
was the best thing for exposure. I mean, even more so than, my social media accounts, which I'm looking to hopefully expand. I love Instagram because of the visual quality
Right.
of it.
Right. Yeah.
Um, a lot of the everybody's just like, you should do TikTok, and I just like,
Yep.
it's the whole TikTok thing of do I do TikTok or do I not? And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
it's
those are all pretty standard things I think that people are going through, especially people, at my age, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
hitting TikTok, not to be ageist or whatever, but it's just like, another social media platform, but it seems to have the most exposure right now. And, so I'm looking to expand those out and, get on Reddit maybe too. Thangs has really been driven a lot by Reddit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I'm kind of learning what that's more about.
It's that just managing social media in and of itself is more than a full-time job, right? And so it's like given the amount of
Mhm.
hours in the day and all that stuff, a lot of times it's all about going where the eyeballs are, and you have to be able in the marketing world to adapt in terms of like, okay, people don't do magazine advertising anymore. What are we doing now? We're doing billboards. Oh, we don't do billboards anymore. We're doing radio. We're not doing radio anymore. We're doing television. We're not doing television anymore. We're doing streaming, and
Hmm.
so this is just
Mhm.
more of the same, and it's interesting with social media because now we've really started to segment,
Right.
like you've said, like generationally, right? Like nobody that's I'm saying this
Mhm.
stereotypically, but nobody that's on TikTok is really doing Facebook. Nobody that's doing not nobody. There is crossover, but there is very clear segmentation,
Sure, right.
especially with Facebook and TikTok, I would say. Maybe Insta to some extent and Twitter as well. YouTube seems to have spanned, in my perception, in terms of like looking at age demographics. Yes, definitely it skews a little bit younger, but in terms of like video sharing platform, it is, the thing. So it's very easy to see like when you're looking at it and say, oh, I've got a limited amount of time and what's going to expand my reach. Is it Twitch? Is it YouTube? And it depends too. Am I live streaming or am I doing cultivated, edited videos or shorts?
Right.
Um, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people have settled on shorts, myself included, because it's like the lowest common denominator for a lot of these things, right? It's least amount of
Sure.
potential
A good
production
bang for the
time,
buck.
good bang for
Right.
the buck,
Hmm.
good bang for the buck. If
Yeah.
I was gonna
Mhm.
say if you're gonna pick one thing, and I, I think I think it crosses over decently well. I think there's people that are on TikTok that I don't think there's any faking it out, faking a lot of people out, especially like when it comes to the Gen Z younger crowd. Like, um, they're gonna like what they like, and if it's if they're being sold to, if it doesn't vibe with like the organic nature that I think TikTok was built upon, where it's just like kind of more for fun. Um, I've always seen like the more you do toward providing information to people and the less
Hmm.
selling, the better social media tends to work. Like I don't tend to use it the way that some companies do, where it's like, oh, $20 off promo. Sometimes we do. Most of the time,
Mhm.
it's like, hey, check this out. This is a new design we're working on, or whatever, because they want to feel like they're in on the process. And you are just so poised to succeed at that regardless of platform. I think TikTok people would love it. I think Twitter, I think Etsy, all of it, everything, YouTube, Insta. But I can completely understand why you have to kind of pick and choose what's familiar.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I need to work on figuring out how I wanna do it too, where it's not just my products,
Hmm.
where it's gonna be potentially me, talking about things and putting my face out there,
Yeah.
more than I have, I think
Yeah.
is gonna be important in the future.
Absolutely. The human element is everything, especially if
Mhm.
this is if you're not trying to be, venture funded business and all this stuff. Like if you're trying to bootstrap and go from the bottom up, anytime you're telling the story about here's who I am, here's what you're supporting, that organic nature I think is a very, very successful approach time and time again. Andrew, do you concur?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the organic piece is everything. I think in terms of the growth and just success of where we've been.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
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 Great.
Guys, listen, this has been a pleasure. We've done a solid 60 here. Chris, I wish you seriously all the success. I can't wait to see you at the next event and see some of your streaming. And if, of course, if there's
Same.
anything we can do to help shine a light, we are more than happy to do so. Again, guys, go take a look at his stuff. His link tree is in the bio. His Thangs and his Etsy and all that stuff. Support your local makers as we do. If you've joined us in the chat and stayed with us this long, we thank you for your likes, your comments, your subscribes, your bringing friends along. That all makes a difference. I wish everybody an incredibly enjoyable, relaxing weekend ahead of you. I hope you're doing something fun and exciting, getting out and touching some grass and enjoying some nature too, please. Don't forget the importance of that. And we will catch you on our next episode of Maker That Money. Until then, everybody say goodbye.